It's been a week in Flonsa, so this was a bit of a challenge in that sense, but we did get some solutions. To be honest, it's a different kind of solution than what we started to build in the morning. But the end result is that Ukraine gets strong economic support, 90 billion in 2026-2027, and it's taken against the EU budget. It's the same thing as the current Ukraine border, I've mentioned it before, that will continue and fill it up. But there's been a general understanding that there's no unity there, and that's why it was a bit of a side role, and we focused on the war reparation loan. What we've been discussing for a long time, and what we can show to Russia that we're capable of acting. What kind of message can we send that we can't make the strongest decisions and take Putin's money and Europe's instead? Well, this wasn't as strong of a decision as I would have wanted. I don't think that Finland or any other country would have wanted it, especially Russia, which was the main source of the money. But this is, from the Ukraine's point of view, a strong decision. And while we've decided that the frozen money stays frozen and no one else can use it, it's a strong demonstration of strength in itself, and the fact that we can make the necessary decisions in Ukraine. But yes, I would have wanted to see a decision based on the frozen money. That would have been right. But they're being utilized here, and the decision is being taken seriously. Was Belgium the only obstacle? Well, actually, as I mentioned during the day's discussion, in many countries, including Somalia, there were concerns and technical and political problems which weren't even fully understood at the time. And as we opened it up more, the number of problems increased. I don't know what happened in detail, but I'm sure it's been told in the meeting. But I'm sure it will be visible what the countries have been thinking. A little bit more. So, I'd like to ask, what were the technical and political concerns? Did this fall into the question of retaliation? Were there any countries that you wanted to involve? And will the negotiated de facto on the war reparation loan really continue, or will it be buried in silence? And how do you think we should ensure that it continues, if there's room for it? Thank you. Well, the technical concerns, the biggest ones, were related to our own people. Belgium asked for such strong regulations that they could have been accepted as such. In practice, they are the regulators of open risks, which are all counted as risks. Also, it was unclear how long this would be extended. If Russia had done something in response, the individual sector would have been able to compensate the losses. These were things that were unclear. But then there was the line that was clear. There were countries that, from the very beginning, strongly opposed this whole system. And, as I said, I have a totally different opinion of what it was. The young Baltic countries, or the North Baltic countries, or the Eastern Mediterranean, have been very strongly in the same camp that have been asking for this. Let's go back to Relay and Estonia, and then we'll get to all the questions. The response to Belgium's demands has been pretty tough and the same all along. But now that you've come to terms with it, what would you like to do next? Well, we brought a 2-page document that was much more detailed, that went into more detail, and that was very long. But it was a document that was accepted by Belgium. And then there was the suspension of taxes. There hasn't been enough money, or at least that's what I've been told. In practice, it's been with me for a long time, for weeks and even months. It's there. And I'm not trying to claim that it would be easy. The biggest disappointment was that we weren't able to make use of the Russian money. But I still remember that we've been able to conclude that they're permanently frozen, and that they can be used as a backboard in the legislation. And thirdly, that it's been written that the preparations will continue, and we'll see how much pressure we get at that time. Thank you. And one last question. The domestic politics surprised me. The opposition has today released a request, in the government's press release, and now we've seen that it's about racism. How do you feel about this request? The Parliament has now taken a break. First of all, I'm very pleased that today we were able to make a decision on behalf of the government. Previously, the leaders of the group had already agreed that this has been a violent, unsubstantial, that there shouldn't be any kind of racism in Finland, so it was the right thing to do. And now the basic Finnish parliamentary group handled this. The members of the group publicly apologized, and they have discussed this, and this was handled in exactly the same way as was agreed in the parliamentary game rules. If the parliamentary group, where the so-called rig, which had just happened, was handled at the right level. And now it was handled in the end, and it was handled in such a way that there was no need for information.
Viestintämme nyt lähettää, että kaikkein kovimpia päätöksiä ei pystytä tekemään ja ottaa käyttöön Putinin rahoja eurooppalaisten rahojen sijaan. No tämä ei ollut niin vahva päätös, mitä olisin itse halunnut.
And what the government is doing is that we are in close contact with the mainstream, especially in Asia. But of course, the mainstream network also works elsewhere. And if we need more action, as we have now been notified, we will handle this matter. I believe that this matter itself will change, and it has now been made completely clear that this kind of action does not belong to Finland, and we do not accept racism.